everybody. My name is Julia Lavala. I'm here to present to you my Culturally Diverse Library project. Um, Let me just one moment. Gonna turn this into a slideshow just so everybody's on the same page. Just give me one moment. So for this assignment, we were asked to create a presentation for our culturally diverse library project, and also use all the library audit tool that we did. And starting on for section A, we were also asked to report on section A and B, which is gender. And I'm going to be looking to the side I have on my paperwork over here to the side. So gender and race, and we were supposed to choose 5 other topics, which I did. I did choose setting, disability, family structure, no, sorry, language, economic diversity, and religion. So starting on gender, just taking a look over here, I have a lot of books, a pretty good representation of female characters, male characters, very small non-binary, excuse me, non-binary or non-gender specific characters, um, only non-human characters. I do believe that I have a pretty good number as well of books. Again, a big number of female only main character, which is higher than the male main character, non-binary, which is also a pretty significant number, and non-human main character for all of the gender section. I'm going to go through all my charts first, and then I'm going to do my recommendations. Now in the section for race, as you can see, it's very much not diverse or non-existent. For Black and or African American, it's very, very low number. Asian Americans, the same. Latinx, the same. Native American and Indigenous, same. I have 0 books about that. Same thing can be for Middle Eastern and Arab and Arab Americans. And of course, I think this is going to be something that's going to be very big in all the sections or in all the audits. A very large number of white characters. But I also was very, very surprised to see that I had majority of my books, even though they were not focusing on a race specifically, they were also not focused only on the white race, but they also had a lot of non-human characters as well. My third one was just one of the options that I picked was settings. I have a very low number, and weirdly enough, I'm not sure why, when I was doing my audit, I actually put 0 for all of them. So because I had all the pictures of the books in my classroom, and I have read those books a million times for my students, I do know what each book is about. So I looked through all the pictures of my books, and I redid my audit, which is going to be a little bit different for the professor with the information that they have. But I actually have about 7 to 8 books on rural areas, urban areas, and suburban areas, and one book only that talks a little bit about desert. So definitely setting is one book that I have the least amount of, I guess, diversity. And then for my other sections, I kind of combined all my other sections in one graph just to make it easy. I picked, because it's all part of the same section, I picked the characters with disabilities, which again, it's not very much. Now, main character with disability, I just very shocked to discover that I only have one book about, with that specifically being the main topic of the book. I do have a bunch of books in my classroom, not a bunch, but as you can see, 12 books with main characters who also speak other languages or also have other words in other languages included in the book. I don't have any books that talks about economic struggles or poverty, or any books that address religion in my classroom. So, book from what some of the recommendations I did for each section. For section A, I do believe, because I do believe I do have a pretty good diversity in the books, a diverse group of books for the gender. One thing, and this is just me picking one other, one choice only, but it would be gender. It would be the non-binary or non-gender specific. I just pulled one thing, one book that I know and I have seen before. This is Pina Goes for the Gold, and it talks about breaking, I guess, not letting society dictate what people can and cannot do. So it's about how um, a little what am I trying to say? How a little hamster it wants to be a gymnastics, and win the gold and go to the Olympics, and really breaking the barriers of the gender, or only being a woman, or having dictating that, the gender for that, I guess, sport. Another one, a couple books that I also thought it would be really good to incorporate and to add to my classroom in a section of race was also, like I said, I have very little representation about African Americans, Asians, Indigenous, and Arabic. So I found these books. I actually have this book, I Song You Down from the Stars, and it's actually a beautiful, beautiful book, which I was very surprised to see that it was actually from an Indigenous writer. So I was actually very, very surprised. And because it's a very touching book, I definitely think this would be a good book for my students to have and to be able to read it. I do believe that they would be able to understand where where the book is going with how the story happens. Another recommendation for my section, it would be the setting. Again, I live in the South. I'm from South Carolina, so I find it very fitting to putting raising me as a country girl, raising me a country girl. There are very little. I have very not that many books on settings, showing different settings. For example, in rural areas, I only have 8. Urban areas, this is the probably, the areas where I have the most, which is rural areas, um, urban areas and suburban areas. But no, I have no books that says anything about deserts or anything about struggling, or even being, I guess, in areas to where they're not very safe and things like that. So I thought it would be interesting to bring those books. Maybe something is beautiful, talking about how, changing a little bit, your urban areas and suburban areas, just bringing in, again, over here, for Dr. Seuss. My students love Dr. Seuss books, so when I saw the one book about deserts, they're very, very much curious, and they love Dr. Seuss books, so I definitely thought this would be a good addition to our library. And finally, for are recommended, for my final section, it would be for disability. I have a couple books on disability, but nothing specifically to where it's talking, like focusing on how people play and how people move and things like that. So these are some of the books that I found that could be a good addition to our classroom. Same thing with language. I put this other book over here, What Do You Celebrate, in the same category as language, because I have students from so many different backgrounds, and I think that our cultural aspects come very much tied with our language as well. So I think this, and that's why I kind of put it over here in the same section as language and religion and economic diversity, just because it kind of fits into all those categories. For religion and economic diversity, I definitely think I want to talk about, my religion and your religion with this book over here, which can bring, show, I guess, other religions to other kids and just describe a little bit of each one of them. And then same thing with the Struggle Bus and Hunger Monster and Lunch from Home. These are just books that, I guess, just to bring a little bit of this other perspective for my students. I am in an area where I don't really have students that could potentially be struggling financially, or even economic struggles like that or poverty. So I think bringing topics like this is very important and necessary for my students to realize that their reality is not everyone's reality. And I have seen and noticed that parents are discussing these topics more and more. So these are some of the books that I thought would be really good to introduce and bring it in, bring to my classroom. Now the questions that you guys that we were also asked to answer was if my classroom is a good mirror for my students. I do believe that my classroom has some good aspects in certain for certain things, such as, for example, I think we do have a good gender diversity, which is I have a good number of books that have main characters and are both female and male characters, and also have majority of my books are books that have um, and some of those books too, not majority, I'm sorry, but some of those books too are also part of the majority of my books are also non-human characters, which is pretty diverse when you really think about it. And so one of the aspects that we could use more improvements are in the, bringing more subjects from non-binary or gender-specific characters, and have more inclusive books that portray more Black and African Americans, Asians, Latinos, Native American, and just bringing more of that, I guess, gender and race from bringing to my classroom, such as well as bringing more books about with different settings, and more books that discusses um, main characters with disabilities, even the LGBTQ I guess community. um, One big thing that my classroom is not a good mirror for is addressing, like we were saying, economic struggles and poverties, bringing religious practices and things like that. I definitely think that my library could improve and use a lot more of that. And then another question would be if my classroom is a good window for my students. I do believe that I do have a good window because I am bringing or trying to, as much as I can, to bring a different reality or bring books that present different realities than what my students have. It's a good window for gender diversity and bring books from all different cultures, but it does exclude the non-binary and LGBTQ families and communities. And like I said, we could have more options on racial setting, religion diversity, and economic struggle as well. Because this is something that this project has become something that I've taken very serious, and it even made me take a second look at home with my daughter. I created this project for my work for my classroom. We have just recently applied for the ABC Quality Program, and with that, we have to bring a lot more of diversity and really bring the more diverse books and more diverse toys and things that we can find at home. So I created this little flyer that I'm showing to you guys. It says, Miss Julie is pursuing her degree in early childhood education, and one of her projects for this semester is to create a culturally diverse project. Because I have so many students in my classroom who comes from different backgrounds and different cultures, I thought this would be a very good project because I do, as someone who's also an immigrant, I do feel like a lot of my students' culture and background are not being represented or not being brought to the classroom and discussed appropriately. So this is something is in the works. I have just discussed with my director and my coordinator, and we were giving the okay to start sending them out and posting on boards, and just having um, just parents be more I guess be more involved in the kids in the creation of a more diverse and inclusive library. So this is my presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and that's it. Thank you, everybody.